Welcome back into Cougar Sports Saturday. Man, it has been an awesome show today. I feel like some of these off-season shows are the best that we put together. The interviews have been great. McKay Hillstead was awesome. Kalani Sitake, big shout-out to the head coach of the Cougars. Brandon Dunson, Jack Kelly, Cougar fans, come on. What other show are you getting this type of content every single week here on KSL News Radio with Cougar Sports Saturday? We do it every single Saturday, noon to 3. And at this point of the show, Matt, we get to the end of the program. We roll out some Cougar Tales and bring in our producer, Nate Slack. Nate, what were some topics that we might have missed that we need to get to before we get out?
All right, so starting out, this past week they've had meetings down in Scottsdale, the Big 12 coaches and Brett Yormark. And Brett Yormark came out and said that the Big 12 basketball coaches favor an expanded NCAA tournament. Do you guys agree with him?
My first feeling is no, but if it did happen, I'd probably embrace it. But why not just keep 68 the way it is? I feel like it's a perfect tournament right now.
It's perfect. The only thing that I would embrace is maybe expanding that opening round where you've got teams on the bubble, maybe double that or triple it. But I don't want to just go from – it used to be 64, and there was talk of let's just add another 32. No, I do not want to get to 96 teams.
No.
That's way too many. But if the first 4 was like the first 8 – and you got in 4 more teams, okay, sure. Maybe there's a few bubble teams that could make things interesting. But, look, it can't get so many teams that it's not special to earn it. It's still, at 68 teams, Mitch, it's still special to get in. If a third of the eligible teams in the country get in, is it then special still? I don't know. I like that you've got to earn it, man, to get in.
Don't turn it into college football bowl games where it doesn't feel like a reward if you're not in one of the New Year's Six bowls. And I would be okay with it if it's a very small increase, to Matt's point. If it expands the first 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, by 2 extra games, okay, I'll put up with that. Anything more, I don't want it. You got to keep that bracket perfect the way it is. I feel like that 68 is just a great field that maintains that, man, what an accomplishment just to get into that bracket.
Yeah, speaking of the bubble, we have Jaxon Robinson, who's kind of on the brink of NBA draft pick, or he's also in the transfer portal. He could return to BYU. This past week, it came out that he is going to be participating in the NBA Combine. Do you guys think he's going to be able to be a draft pick in the NBA, or is he going to be a transfer guy? What do you guys feel about Jaxon?
I think he's a draft pick. I feel like he finds a way to get into that second round. But, Matt, you and I were talking earlier in the show on one of the breaks. What if Jaxon Robinson did come back to BYU? It might seem far-fetched because he's got such a strong relationship with Mark Pope, but hey, it seemed far-fetched that Kevin Young would be here. It seemed far-fetched that Dallin Hall would be back. It seemed far-fetched that Chris Burgess and Richie Saunders would be back. Kevin Young's just getting everything done. Why not go get Jaxon Robinson?
Hey, it also seemed far-fetched a few years ago, and I might be reaching for straws here, but this was one of my first hot takes of Cougar Sports Saturday 5 years ago. I sort of argued that Yoli Childs would come back, and that ended up happening. And I felt more strongly that Yoli would return than Jaxon would because Jaxon has a higher and brighter NBA future just by his measurables and what he did at BYU. But if there's no chance you can be a first-round draft pick, you would be dumb in today's day and age to go pro. He would make a killing in NIL coming back to BYU or at Kentucky or wherever. The thing that is so interesting about BYU is, look, Dallin Hall talked about this yesterday. We played some clips from JJ and Alex on KSL Sports Zone. He wants to play in the NBA. All these guys want to play in the NBA. BYU has an NBA sales pitch that they've never had, and Mark Pope does not have that at Kentucky. Nobody he's coached has played in the NBA at a high level where Kevin Young can say, dude, look what I just did for Grayson Allen. Look what I did for Devin Booker. Look what and hey, J.J. Redick is a hot coaching name. He might coach the Lakers, for heaven's sakes. J.J. Redick was begging for him to be the Phoenix Suns coach before they hired Frank Vogel. He can sell the NBA. And look, BYU, they play in a great league. I'm not going to say that Jaxon Robinson Mitch is, coming back to BYU, but the Combine will be interesting for Jaxon because he's going to measure well in some facets. He's not going to test well in others. So how is that interpreted by the scouts. He's going to have a great wingspan. He's going to have a silky smooth shooting stroke. He does not have a super high vertical. He's not going to be some crazy, twitchy, fast athlete in those drills. So it's fascinating to see what happens with Jaxon Robinson, but I did think it was incredibly noteworthy, Mitch, that he mentioned BYU when he talked about, I'm putting my name in the draft, but I'm also going in the portal, and BYU was mentioned as a destination there. The door's not closed for Robinson.
And it speaks to the culture and the relationship that those players from last year's team still have. The worst-case scenario, if Robinson, his next steps for BYU's sake, would be him going to Kansas. There's been rumors that he could be maybe a Kansas target. That would be worst case because you don't want to face him in league. But it would be awesome to see for BYU. Maybe one of the best things would be him going to the league and succeeding. But, man, it would be amazing for him to be back in BYU and have that door open. Kevin Young's got to feel like maybe there's a chance.
Is it petty of me, though, to want him to return and then go? So then you would say Pope still hasn't. It was Kevin Young who got him into the league.
I got that. Okay. I like it. Hey, it's happening now.
Former linebacker Isaiah Kaufusi posted on X yesterday. He says, "I will die on this hill. The 2020 football team was the best football team at BYU. I would take us against any year." What do you guys think about that take?
My first thought initially is no, that's not the case at all, Isaiah. His argument is going to be based on NFL because 17 players on that team got NFL opportunities, and Zach obviously leading the way being a number 2 pick. But no, you can't say that. It's not because that schedule was historically bad. Historically bad.
Not their fault, but historically bad.
They were willing to play A&M, Alabama. I remember being on the show. They're going to play the Crimson Tide. They're going to play Alabama and Texas, baby. Let's go. And it didn't happen. Like, there was a willingness, but just no. Because the best team that they did face was Coastal, and they lost. But they also did face Boise and wrecked that Boise team.
Bad
team, It was a
though.
good team. Dang good team. Talented team, but I don't think they're all time.
No. They don't post the same record against their original schedule, and it pains me to say that, but
I think they could have got 9 wins.
Yeah. They would have been look, that 2020 team is a very good football team.
Yes.
It's on the second level of great BYU teams. So when you're talking national championship, obviously the Ty Detmer year where they beat Miami, like those are great BYU football teams. This was a really good BYU football team. And look, in all due respect, too, to Isaiah. Loved Isaiah. It was always good to us. Great with the media. A really good football player. Why didn't you come back? Like, your decision-making is questionable. You should have returned with that extra year.
I would argue that the 2021 team gets put in higher regard because of what they did to the Pac-12.
For sure.
And just went undefeated against them and were great against power conference teams. Jaron Hall, to his credit, he had some incredible wins just against logos. Virginia, USC.
Utah.
Jaron Hall, that team right there because of the Utah piece,
yep,
probably puts them in higher regard.
100%. And I would take that team over the 2020 team because, look, we're splitting hairs because both of those teams had Tyler Algier, and he was a great back.
Dax Milne was awesome in 2020, too.
Fair.
He was an amazing receiver that year.
Yes, he had a great year, but that 2021 team.
Puka.
Yeah, say no more, right? And look, if we're really having this conversation, you're saying all things are equal, totally healthy. That 2021 team was battling injuries from the get-go, man. Puka was banged up from the beginning. Jaron Hall got banged up. So, if they're fully stacked, it's hard to pick against that 21 team.
It then kind of comes down to your preference between Zach or Jaron. Like, which quarterback do you think is greater? Is Zach greater than Jaron Hall? I think he had a better single season than Jaron.
Yes.
Maybe because of the schedule, but he just exploited those teams like they were far inferior. But that's really kind of if you're talking those two teams, that's kind of where it centers on who's the greater BYU quarterback, Jaron Hall or Zach Wilson. You might lean Zach because that 1 year was amazing, but Jaron was pretty awesome.
I lean Jaron personally because of the schedule. I just don't believe that those numbers would have been the same with the original schedule, but we'll never know, right? And that's what makes this discussion fun. All right, Mitch, we should probably put a bow on this thing. Great show. Next week, we'll be back with a lot more. Look, these off-season shows, as you mentioned, a lot of fun. We got more football interviews for you. And look, there's more hoops to talk about, too. The staff's not done. So there's more news coming down the pike with BYU Hoops as well, and we'll have you covered every step of the way. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.